me now is Congressman Mike Quigley, Democrat from Illinois, a member of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, always good to have you on the broadcast. So, your colleague there is stressing the importance of weapons, but what I want to ask is, what about the diplomatic track? Have we completely given up on that front? I know the administration says you can't negotiate with Putin if he's not willing to negotiate, but would consistent effort be effective at some point, or even is that happening and we're just not hearing about it?
No, I think it's particularly difficult right now. It's not just that it's Putin, it's the Russian maximalist demands which continue. So if we begin with a ceasefire and recognize that it's extremely difficult, not impossible, to negotiate at a sign of weakness or desperation, I think the fact that we're showing Putin's strength by providing these arms, enhanced arms, and I was frustrated as we began this conflict. I think it puts it into a position where this is possible. But obviously, it's not being talked about a lot, to your point, and it is an area of concern. It is indeed never too late for diplomacy.
Yeah. Well, we know the president has asked for $33 billion in aid to Ukraine, and that brings the total to nearly $50 billion thus far of our contributions into the war effort. It appears to be the most money we've ever spent on a war where we have not fired a single shot. So do we not have a diplomatic responsibility as well as providing the military and humanitarian aid support?
I think we do, but those diplomatic efforts need to involve probably just greater sanctions at this point. If Putin won't come to the table, I think we begin to further enhance those sanctions. We haven't fully sanctioned the banks and taken those out of the SWIFT program. We haven't fully dealt with Russian energy sources. And the numbers that you show for military support are large. But the financial assistance that Russia gets when Europe purchases energy from them probably dwarfs this. So that's something I think the EU will begin in earnest this week. And we hope it isn't a slow process.
Yeah. I want to play for you now something that my colleague Chuck Todd asked Senator Bob Menendez on NBC's Meet the Press this morning. Here it is.
When Secretary Austin did a debrief after his visit to Kyiv, he said something earlier this week about our goals now with Russia. We want to see Russia weakened to the degree that it can't do the kinds of things that it has done in invading Ukraine. In response to that, the Russians essentially said, well, the Americans are fighting a proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. Isn't the answer to that yes? That in that sense, yes, this is a proxy war between the West and Russia. Is that it? Do you accept that description?
No, not necessarily.
So here's the deal. At the end of the day, you can't deny that the U.S. has some form of involvement here, even if just monetarily. So I want to pose the same question to you that Chuck asked. Is this a proxy war?
Of course it is. You don't give this kind of aid, you don't sanction to bring the Russian economy down unless you're involved with a conflict. The fact of the matter is, Russia has committed acts of war against our country for some time now. The elections in 2016, 18, and 20, the other cyber attacks that have already taken place, the threats that Putin has made about putting hypersonic missiles in Cuba and Central America. These are acts and threats of war. And the fact is that they violated international law and attacked and invaded a sovereign democratic country. This puts us at that state of conflict, and we need to act like it. Again, to your point, diplomacy matters. We still have to fulfill our obligations there, but we have to address the fact that we're at war and we have to defend ourselves accordingly.
Yeah, well, we have Defense Secretary Austin saying that Russia needs to be weakened. You have President Biden certainly calling some of the atrocities that we witnessed war crimes and genocide. And then also suggesting the prospect of regime change. He did so on that world stage in Poland. I think we can all agree that Ukraine is suffering through horrific atrocities, but is this level of rhetoric part of a greater strategy?
I'm not sure if it's part of a greater strategy. It's certainly poking the bear. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're putting unprecedented economic support, humanitarian support, and military support behind the Ukrainian war effort, and it's altogether fitting and proper that we do so. I don't know that we need to further exacerbate the situation with Putin, getting in his mind that which he probably already believes, that we want to change the regime, that we want to take him out and weaken him to the point. This war already weakens Russia, image alone, by exposing their military shortcomings. But it also has unified NATO. You're going to see troop posturing enhancement, military enhancement throughout Eastern Europe, throughout all of Europe, and that alone will make Russia weaker. So I'm for fighting this war on an even level and giving Ukraine everything they necessarily need to do. There are some diplomatic channels we have to fulfill, and I don't want to put Putin in a position where he can tell the Russian people, see, they're trying to get rid of me.
I asked this question of your Intel Committee colleague, Adam Schiff, as he's traveling on the way back from the visit to Ukraine. But the concept of victory. U.S. officials say it's up to Ukraine to decide what defines victory. But I want to know what you think victory will or should look like. Yeah,
first, Russia gains nothing from this for their assault, certainly no land acquisition. That Ukraine and NATO are strengthened militarily to protect from future attacks. That all the assets that have been seized, will be seized, are turned over to Ukraine so that they can be made whole and begin to rebuild their country. And finally, at least at the top of my head, those responsible for war crimes are held accountable.
Okay. And I'm going to say you are very accurately echoing the same sentiments of Representative Schiff. So we're going to assume that's the definition of victory going forward. Congressman Mike Quigley, thank you, my friend. Good to see you. There you go. Thanks.
Thank you.